chapter entitled Qualities of Sri Krishna. So, number 7, wonderful linguist. Rupa Goswami says that a person who knows the languages of different countries, especially the Sanskrit language, which is spoken in the cities of the demigods, as well as other worldly languages, including those of the animals, is called a wonderful linguist. It appears from this statement that Krishna can also speak and understand the languages of the animals. An old woman in Vrindavan, present at the time of Krishna's pastimes, once stated in surprise, "How wonderful it is that Krishna, who owns the hearts of all the young girls of Vrajabhumi, can nicely speak the language of Vrajabhumi with the gopis, while in Sanskrit he speaks with the demigods, and in the language of the animals he can even speak with the cows and buffalo." Similarly, in the language of the Kashmir province and with the parrots and other birds, as well as in most common languages, Krishna is so expressive. She inquired from the gopis as to how Krishna had become so expert at speaking so many different types of languages. Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki, Shri Siko Nitayama Pashashi ki. There was a, I can't remember the name of the book. I think it might have been Blazing Sadhus, which is a bit of a take on that old movie, Blazing Saddles. And there was one time, it was the early days when Prabhupada took some disciples to India. And one Mataji, I think it might have been Yamuna, was trying to prepare something for Prabhupada's lunch, and this monkey kept on coming and disturbing things. And when Prabhupada found about it, he went down and he spoke with the monkey, and the monkey went away and didn't come back. She said, I don't know what he said, but he said something. She said it was kind of incoherent to her, but whatever it was that he said, the monkey just left and didn't come back again, because it had been coming disturbing her for days. That's what she wrote in a way. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 14, text number 10, I believe. Is that right? 10. Okay. Trivargam Nati Krishtrena. Trivargam Nati Krishtrena. Bhajeta Griha Medyapi. Bhajeta Griha Medyapi. Yata Desham Yata Kalam. Yata Desham Yata Kalam. Yavad Daivopapaditam. Yavad Daivopapaditam. Trivargam Nati Krishtrena. Bhajeta Grihamedyapi. Yata Desham Yata Kalam. Yavadaivo Trivargam Nati Krishtrena. Bhajeta Grihamedyapi. Yata Desham Yata Kalam. Yavadaivo Trivargam Nati Krishtrena. Bhajita Grihamedyapi. Yata Desham Yata Kalam. Yavad papaditam. Please chant. Trivargam, three principles, namely religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Na, not Atikrishtrena, by severe endeavour, Bhajeta, should execute. Grihamedi, a person interested only in family life. Happy, although Yatadesham, according to the place. Yatakalam, according to the time. Yavat, as much as. Daiva, by the grace of the Lord. Upapaditam, obtained. Translation, even if one is a householder rather than a brahmachari, a sannyasi or a vanaprastha, one should not endeavour very hard for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. Even in householder life, one should be satisfied to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available with minimum endeavour, according to place and time, by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. Please repeat, even if one is a householder, rather than a brahmachari, a sannyasi, or a vanaprastha, one should not endeavour very hard for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. Even in householder life, one should be satisfied to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available with minimum endeavour, according to place and time, by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In human life, there are four principles to be fulfilled: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. First, one should be religious, observing various rules and regulations, and then one must earn some money for maintenance of his family and the satisfaction of his senses. The most important ceremony for sense gratification is marriage, because sexual intercourse is one of the principal necessities of the material body. Yan maitunna di grihamedi sukham hitucham. Although sexual intercourse is not a very exalted requisite in life, both animals and men require some sense gratification because of material propensities. One should be satisfied with married life and not expand energy for extra sense gratification or sex life. As for economic development, the responsibility for this should be entrusted mainly to the Vaishyas and Grihastas. Human society should be divided into Varnas and Ashrams, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Economic development is necessary for Grihastas. Brahman Grihastas should be satisfied with a life of Adhyayana, Adhyapana, Yajna, and Yajna, being learned scholars, teaching others to be scholars, learning how to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, and also teaching others how to worship Lord Vishnu or even the demigods. A Brahmin should do this without remuneration, but he is allowed to accept charity from a person whom he teaches how to be a human being. As for the Kshatriyas, they are supposed to be the kings of the land, and the land should be distributed to the Vaishyas for agricultural activities, cow protection, and trade. Shudras must work. Sometimes they should engage in occupational duties as cloth manufacturers, weavers, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, brassmiths, and so on, or else they should engage in hard labor to produce food grains. These are the different occupational duties by which men should earn their livelihood, and in this way human society should be simple. At the present moment, however, everyone is engaged in technological advancement, which is described in Bhagavad Gita's Ugra Karma, extremely severe endeavour. This Ugra Karma is the cause of agitation within the human mind. Men are engaging in many sinful activities and becoming degraded by opening slaughterhouses, breweries, and cigarette factories, as well as nightclubs and other establishments for sense enjoyment. In this way, they are spoiling their lives. In all of these activities, of course, householders are involved, and therefore it is advised here, with use of the word api, that even though one is a householder, one should not engage himself in severe hardships. One's means of livelihood should be extremely simple. As for those who are not grihastas, the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis, they don't have to do anything but strive for advancement in spiritual life. This means that 3/4 of the entire population should stop sense gratification and simply be engaged in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. Only 1/4 of the population should be grihasta, and that should be according to laws of restricted sense gratification. The grihastas, vanaprasthas, brahmacharis, and sannyasis should endeavor together with their total energy to become Krishna conscious. This type of civilization is called Daivi Varnashram. One of the objectives of the Krishna consciousness movement is to establish this Daivi Varnashram, but not to encourage so-called Varnashram without scientifically organized endeavor by human society. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshunmilitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karoti Vatalam Bhagavalagate Girim Nyat Kripatamam Vande Shri Girim Dinitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Even if one is a householder rather than a brahmachari, a sannyasi, or a vanaprastha, one should not endeavour very hard for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. Even in householder life, one should be satisfied to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available, with minimum endeavour, according to place and time, by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. So it's interesting, of these 4 orders, we have brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. There's only one of them which gives some license for sense gratification. And just like we have some license for doing something, then it has some restrictions, like you have a driving license. But if you do enough things or something serious enough, then your license may be revoked, or you're in transgression of the rules. And we see that people are working hard often in jobs they don't like, to get some money to survive. And to some degree, they can continue to do that if they have some sense gratification. And sense gratification of the body generally culminates in sex life because Maitunya Agra, the shackles of sex life. So the subtle leads to the gross. So the symptoms of subtle sex life, can anyone mention any of those? Fame. Yeah, fame, distinction, adoration, and gain. So we see sometimes people even give up gross sex life, pursuit of that, for a reputation. They're more interested in a certain type of fame or distinction. They can perform austerities. Because you read in the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, that sometimes the demonic will perform sacrifices, and you think, well, how can they be demonic if they're performing sacrifices? I thought we're supposed to perform sacrifices. But what's the purpose behind it? The purpose behind it is simply to gain some reputation as being, some kind of great sadhu. Example, which we've mentioned a few times before, is that one devotee decided that he was going to chant extra rounds, which generally isn't a bad thing. That's encouraged. Prabhupada says chant 16 rounds on the beads minimum and unlimited off the beads. So this is in keeping with Krishna's instructions. Satatam kirtayanto mam, always chant my name, always chant my glories. So in this way we become immunized from the effects of Maya. Krishna's presence keeps the presence of Maya away. So anyway, this devotee, other devotees were reporting back to Prabhupada and said, such and such Das, he wants to chant 64 rounds a day, and now he wants to live outside the association of devotees in a field somewhere, and now he wants to live under a tree. And Prabhupada says, I want a simply sense gratification. So when the devotees were explaining these things to Prabhupada, they were thinking, he's such a great person, he's chanting all day, he just wants to live under a tree. But he wants to, the word want was the key there, that he wants to. And he says, what about the spiritual master? Another one was, there was one devotee who was very austere. He hardly ate anything. He was so thin, emaciated. Prabhupada says, okay, now you should take sumptuous prasad. So he did, and he got quite plump. And a few months later, Prabhupada had seen him, and he says, now fast. And he was shocked. He says, when you want to fast, you can fast, but when the spiritual master says fast, you don't want to fast. Simply sense gratification. So this was the two heads of the same coin, aversion and attachment. So the main thing is we follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Sometimes it appears there's contradiction, like here it's saying one shouldn't endeavor greatly, but also Prabhupada was saying that work hard for Krishna and go back to Godhead. So we shouldn't think that simply, okay, that's good. Now we've got permission just to sit in the ashram and read all day. And Prabhupada did say that if you simply try to do that, without proper purification and advancement, then you simply sleep and think of sex life. Therefore, because the modes of passion are prevalent in the Western society, if you're lucky, usually it's mode of ignorance. But because the modes of passion are there, if we rise out the mode of ignorance for a little while, then people need some activities, need some engagement. So that verse is there, Rishikesha, Rishikenam, Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. Sevanam means service. Rishikesha is a name for the Lord, which means the master of the senses. Krishna is completely controlled of his senses. It's not that any time he loses control. So if we serve Rishikesh, then our senses also become controlled, become purified. Because Krishna is pavitram, pure, then when we associate with Krishna, and this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is, my dear Lord, please engage me in your devotional service. Not, my dear Lord, please give me 7 days a week off. So, as now in this world, if we engage in devotional service, first of all, we may have to engage in service, and we try to figure out what is devotion. So, first of all, some practical engagement to purify the senses, and then the devotional aspect can be introduced. Or if you're lucky and you catch the message early and you can do it with devotion, that's great. And that is tested. It's practical. Devotional service is a practical thing. If we don't do something for Krishna and Krishna's mission, then how will we know? How will we be tested? And what is the test? Is that regardless of what comes our way, we continue with our service. We remain steady. So even sometimes externally, we may be steady in the mind. Internally, maybe doing somersaults. I don't want to do this. Why me? I'm always got to do this one. And sometimes we think, well, this person here could do it much better than me. Why is that idiot temple commander or temple president asking me to do it? But the thing is, maybe because we don't want to do it, and also because it's not actually the activity which is important. It's the fact that we want to do it to please Krishna. We want to offer something with some devotion, even if it appears materially incorrect. I've used this experience or example before. Once I was at Kusum Sarovar, and it was very hot. It was May. Kusum Sarovar was at Govardhan in Vrindavan, and at that time of year, day by day, it's just getting hotter and hotter. It's like you can practically feel it day by day because that's summertime. It's coming into summer. And if you're not careful, you can get heat stroke. So the deity had a little electric fan, like a little table fan, and somebody had, the Mataji there, the old lady, she tied it onto the railings and it was pointing down to the deities. And it was going fairly slow, like about this. And because of my mechanical training and experience, then I thought I'll take it down, clean up the brushes, put it back on, it should work better. So I took it apart, and I was a little proud thinking, I'll do some, I've got this knowledge, I can use this, and I'll, that fan, which is kind of almost pointless, do something nice service. But I was more actually thinking, I would please someone and perhaps impress them. So I did all the work necessary to it, plugged it in, and it went like this. And I thought, oh no, what have I done? I'm getting smashed here. My pride has been crushed. And I thought, thanks, Krishna, but I can't return that back to the altar now. So I just left it aside. And then I came back later and someone put it back on the altar and it was going like this. So I just took it down again. I thought, they probably haven't even noticed it's not working now, practically. So the old lady came and through my godsister Plindri, she translated, she said, so who took the fan off the altar? I said, I did. She said, why'd you do that? I said, because it was useless. She says, no, you're useless. The fan, that's the only fan we have, and it's the best we have to offer to Krishna. So we're offering it to Krishna. I thought, wow, what a lesson. That even if you seem to have almost nothing, you offer it to Krishna with devotion, that's much more valuable than having, like, chucking that in the bin. Not that if something's broken, we just use it. If it's broken and dangerous, if we have the means, we replace it. And offer the best according to our means. But if we don't have the means, then we offer the best we can. Sometimes in these instances, Krishna is not saying what we do, he's saying what we're holding back. Like sometimes you see someone will come and they'll do the prayers in front of the deity and they'll pull out a nice shiny penny and drop it in the deity box, and then they nip into their brand new Mercedes electrical vehicle and then they shoot off. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but sometimes not even so much. So in this sense, Krishna's not saying what they've given, he's saying what they're holding back because they have the means to give more. And it's kind of insulting. There's a nice story in this regard. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, he was in the Parampara. In the photos on the altar, you see he's the one just to the left of the 6 Goswamis picture. And he was known by all the great Vaishnavas at the time, such as Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, or commander-in-chief of all the devotees. He was so highly respected. And he was very advanced in terms of material years. He was well over 100. And at this one point in time, he had been crippled, so he had a very stout disciple called, was it Bihari? Bihari Lal, maybe? I think that was his name. Who used to carry him everywhere. So because he was a mendicant, and he would do this thing called madhukari. Madhukari means doing just like the bee does, doing the business of a bee. A bee goes from one flower, takes a little bit, and then another bit. It doesn't take everything from the one flower. It's not like the humans where we just totally rape all the resources of material nature and there's nothing there for generations, short-sighted. They take a little bit here, a little bit there. So in this way, they're not overburdening one flower. So in the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that on the pretext of begging alms door to door, the sadhus go door to door to enlighten the people in general. It's not that they've become homeless beggars and they just haven't got it together to go and get a job or something like that. They're enlightened beings who are not attached, and they go door to door on the pretext of begging. And also just mentioned, like in this verse here, they're not getting involved in ugra karma. They become purified, and they make it their business to go and purify those who are engaged in ugra karma or unbeneficial works. So he was doing madhukari, and this very, very wealthy man, in India they call it a crorepati, isn't it? A very, very wealthy person. Then he gave 1 rupee. And so sometime later after they left, then Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj says to his disciple, take me back to that man that gave the 1 rupee. So he took him back because he'd been thinking about it. And then he took him back, and the guy came to the door and he says, my dear sir, you have got so many rupees. I could not carry the burden of this 1 rupee. I don't know how you can bear to carry the burden of so many rupees, so I'm giving it back to you. So he was teaching the lesson that you think that this is acceptable. Not that he was attached. You can see he wasn't attached to give it back. But he was teaching the lesson to the man. You've got so many rupees and you think you just give 1 rupee. And what is the value of a rupee nowadays? 1 penny, isn't it? So like roughly 100 rupees to the pound, isn't it? So in this, we'll just come back to the other point, was that of the 4 orders, then 3 of them are meant for cultivating spiritual life solely and wholly, which is brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas. In the Krishna conscious movement, Prabhupada coined this term grihastha brahmachari, which means even as a grihastha, that doesn't mean to say that we have unrestricted license for sense gratification. It is restricted in this way. You see, there's no difference. Grihitako, banitako, natake, janjal. There's no difference between the grihasthas and the banis or the vanis. Vani means those who are living in the forest, practicing spiritual life. Or in other words, their sole purpose is not to get involved in living in the cities where they can be distracted from their spiritual goals. But and Prahlad Maharaj says that he wasn't interested in going to live in the forest or living in the hills etc. But he wanted to go. Shishi Kuntai Mapishashiki. He wanted to go to the cities which were full of people so that he could give them Krishna consciousness. So this is considered the higher type of renunciation. So for those who are beginners in renunciation, then we may sometimes have to disassociate ourselves from the objects of the senses, otherwise the temptation is too strong. So that is a good thing. Just like in first canto, Srila Prabhupada says that in one of the purports he mentioned this word nirmama. Nirmama means what? Nir means not mine, exactly, yeah. Nothing is mine. And we shouldn't try to twist it into some kind of Buddhist statement and saying that nothing is mine, that everything I own is the nothing. But what it means is we don't own anything. And this is confirmed in many places throughout the Shastra. In the Ishopanishad, Isavasamidam Sarvam, everything is controlled and owned by the Lord. And recently we're also hearing from the Bhagavatam that we have a certain quota which is given to us by our karma. Sometimes people may be envious of another person's possessions, but it's not practical because they have a better karma than you. So you can't be envious of someone else's karma. Well, you can be, but it's not going to do you any good, because if your karma is such that you're not going to get that no matter how you try, then there's no point of just being desirous of other things which are beyond you. And as a devotee, if things come into our possession, then we use them in Krishna's service. So sometimes the devotees may have opulence, sometimes they may not have it, but they can continue to serve regardless. That's the main thing. The service is constant, and we utilize whatever we have in Krishna's service. And Prabhupada says the devotees should have the best of things. Not because they're attached or because they should get some material reward, but because they're doing the Lord's work. There was one instance, there was a video you can see it, Prabhupada was being interviewed by some reporter who obviously was trying to have a dig. He was being a little bit barbed with his questions. And he said, well, I see that your disciples picked you up in a Rolls Royce from the airport. And Prabhupada said, what is this Rolls Royce? Simply some tin and rubber. He says, why not a gold car? You know, if the representative of the country is picked up in a big car, the representative of God should be collected in a gold car. At this time, I think it was the same video where Prabhupada was sitting on the floor, although next to an asana. So the reporter says, who's this seat meant for? He says, normally I would sit here, but because you're envious, then I won't sit on it. So, and one who sits on the asana, they're representing Vyas, compiler of the Vedas. They're not spouting their own thing. They're only, therefore Prabhupada says that his only qualification is he never changed anything. So this is the important thing, is we don't change anything. To give class or not give class, that is the question. To give class shouldn't be a matter of, oh, just check me out, I'm giving class. Like I remember hearing one devotee saying, he came back from Mayapur and he'd given class. He says, it was Vrindavan. He says, I always knew I'd be giving class there one day. I thought that sounds a bit egotistical. You know, we shouldn't be saying it like that. It's a privilege. You know, we should be more prepared to hear than to speak. That's why you have 2 ears and one mouth. Hear twice as much. And then sometimes devotees don't want to give class. That's also another type of false ego. If you're reading the books, then you should be able to speak about them. So sometimes we're shy, but we have to surrender just to overcome that. Like normally many devotees, they wouldn't dress up in bed sheets, shave their head and walk down the high streets chanting some obscure Sanskrit mantra while ringing bells. You know, if you look at yourself many years before that, you think, well, I can't see myself doing that. It's quite entertaining or it's interesting, but I don't know what kind of person gets into doing that. Some people may think like that, or you might just immediately become attracted to it and think, oh, that looks amazing, but I don't know if I could ever do that. But then we find ourselves, by the association of devotees, getting carried along and doing these things because the false ego is peeling off. We're not identifying with who we were before. Just like Mangalananda Prabhu says, for the caterpillar or the worm to become a butterfly, then old self has to die. So we can't remain in the material world and go back to Godhead at the same time. And this is the frightening thing. It's nobody else. We can spend a whole lifetime or many lifetimes blaming everybody else why we're not so advanced spiritually, or don't have the right opportunities or whatever. But really, the choice is up to us. And that is clear in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna discusses so many questions and doubts that Arjuna has, and he eradicates all those doubts. And at the end of it, he says, now that I've told you everything, it's up to you what you do. And that is for us. So the Bhagavad Gita is not some historical thing that took place and it was for Arjuna. It was actually, Arjuna was performing a great service by being completely surrendered to Krishna and Krishna's will. He allowed himself to be in that position where Krishna could speak the Bhagavad Gita for us. So some of these lessons, such as being patient and being tolerant, sometimes it doesn't matter how everybody else behaves, we'll still remain intolerant or impatient. So it's something we have to learn, and it's one of the first instructions Krishna gives, is to learn to be tolerant. So the learning of it, he gives that instruction because it is something very important. There was two devotees were struggling, they were doing service together, and they couldn't stand the sight of each other. They were really having a difficult time tolerating each other. And they reported this to Prabhupada, and he said, that is your austerity. Learn to tolerate. And that is a lesson for all of us. So within the Krishna conscious movement, even though there's whatever we do, we actually do it for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, and to try to further this Krishna conscious movement so that many other people can take advantage of it. So these principles of the human form of life, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, then these are already automatically taken care of. Because when Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharma Parityaja Mamikam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papabhyo Mokshesham Imasuchaha, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me, I'll protect you from all sinful action, do not fear. Then sometimes people, they were maybe attached to their previous concepts of dharma or religiosity. So different people from different cultures come to Krishna to surrender. And I was just speaking with one devotee yesterday where he was interested in doing some type of yajna. I says, yeah, but the actual yajna of the age is Harinam Sankirtan. We have to learn to put faith in that. That is a recommended performance of sacrifice, chanting the holy names. We can do other types of yajnas, but really, if we have faith in the holy name, then that supersedes all other types of yajnas which were meant for previous ages, such as 5 sacrifices, etc. So we can do these things, and we do them as samskars or to as part of events or ceremonies, but it shouldn't be at the expense of chanting Hare Krishna, and it shouldn't be that this is more important than the chanting of the holy names. So it's mentioned that no sacrifice is complete without the chanting of the holy names and distribution of prasad. So in Kali Yuga, Krishna has decided to make it very simple for us, but we're not so simple at times. So we complicate it and we think, oh, there must be more to it than that. And Prabhupada said it's so simple we could miss it. So therefore, throughout the day, we should always try to remember Krishna. That is the most important principle. Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And try to accept our lot, and all the while remembering Krishna. And if we have a family, then we have to earn some money for their upkeep. Also, Prabhupada says that renunciants, they should not become a burden on society. Just like recently we had one experience where some young renunciant showed up and he was trying to get donations off everybody, and he hadn't done anything. We didn't know him from Adam, so Prabhupada, I'm not saying that he is, but unless you're actually going to do something. So the duty of the brahmachari, for example, is to go and collect alms on behalf of the spiritual master or the spiritual authority. And then the spiritual master or the authority will maintain you. Not that we just kind of laze around, do nothing, make our own program, and somebody's got to support us. This is like, the Krishna conscious movement is not a spiritual dole system. People have become accustomed to this, but they don't realize that there's a price to pay that we have to give sometime if we haven't already. We don't want to be indebted. So there's 3 things the Prabhupada said should be taken care of immediately. Does anyone know what those things are? Correct, top of the class. Fire, disease, and death. If there's a fire, you don't think, well, we'll let that get a bit bigger before we deal with it. I'm a bit busy just now, I'm on my phone. And then, the deity's curtains are on fire because somebody dropped a ghee wick doing arti. And then the pujari's thinking, I'll just carry on. And, I've got to do this for another 20 minutes. Hopefully the place hasn't burnt down by then, and then I'll take care of the fire. As soon as the fire, take care of it. If you drop a ghee wick and do an arti, what do? You take the Achman cup and you douse it immediately. You just stop whatever you're doing and take care of the fire. Or if there's disease, what's one of the busiest shops in the city centre? Is a pharmacist, right? We used to look for the busiest spot in town when we were doing books. When we were young, we had so much energy. And usually we'd look and see where Boots the Chemist is, because that's what it was like. Everybody was going there. Because everyone's suffering from something or another. Sometimes we think, oh, that person's got a great life, but you don't know what they're suffering, physically or mentally. And people are just looking for immediate relief. They're not thinking, okay, perhaps my diet is wrong, perhaps my lifestyle is wrong, I better change that. No, they just want a pill, drop a pill and sort it out immediately. Back to the doctors, that pill didn't work, give me another one. I'll just take 2 instead of 1 now. And then finally they'll say, oh, there's nothing we can do for you. And so with disease, we want to destroy that. And with debt as well, because we don't know when we may die. At any moment we may die. If we die with some debt, then you carry that on. But if one becomes a devotee and engages wholeheartedly in Krishna's service, then these debts, material debts, not that if you join the temple and you've got like £10,000 student's debt, the temple's going to pay it for you or something, but but debts to society, various types of dharma which may have to be done according to the varnashram system. Then one becomes a devotee, then the highest dharma is serving Krishna directly, because everything else is culminating in that yoginam apisarvisham madgatir nantaratmana Shadavan bhajate yomam sami yukta tamomataha. So after explaining the different types of sacrifices in yoga and control of the senses, etc., to Arjuna, then Krishna culminates. The highest of all yogis is one who is fully absorbed in him. And of all yogis, one who is fully absorbed in me, knowing me, I can't quite remember the English of it. Does anyone know the English of that one? Is the highest of all. He's most intimately united with me. And it was Yamunacharya also was saying that now that he's become fully surrendered to Krishna, then he says goodbye to all his other family dharma, various other types of dharma. So even as a grihastha, one can become as good as a devotee as any of the other renounced orders. Simply one, as Bhagavad Thakur says, Grihi Tako Bani Tako Nataki Janjal, whether you're a grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, brahmachari, as long as you're engaged in 100% in remembering Krishna, then there's no fear of entanglement. But it's interesting also here, it's been mentioned that, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, one's means of livelihood should be extremely simple. So here, Prabhupada is pointing to this principle of over-collecting. The human race is not a race to see who's got the most toys by the time they come to the point of death. So it's not like there's a big club at the end and everybody meets and say, okay, how much did you leave behind? Oh, I left behind like $7 million. How much will you leave behind? Well, I just had some debt. I left that behind, or I had a $5 in the bank when I died. It's not a matter of how much you've got to leave behind. If you have dependents, then that's a type of responsibility. That's one thing. But economic development should not supersede our endeavors for spiritual life. Not that we become so distracted by this temporary material world that we just want to earn enough to enjoy ourselves. And enjoying ourselves means forgetting Krishna. But if we remember Krishna, then enjoyment comes automatically. Just like yesterday, we had a nice festival for the glorification of the deities and for the pleasure of the devotees. And they had a nice time chanting and dancing and feasting. But they weren't there simply to enjoy themselves. They were here to hear about the deities and engage in Krishna Katha, subjects about Krishna. But enjoyment comes automatically. They don't have to seek it out separately. When we seek it out separately, it means, okay, we'll leave Krishna aside for now, and I'm going to down this track on my own, and I'll come back to Krishna when I've enjoyed. That kind of thing means we're purposely forgetting Krishna. And we're forgetting that this principle, by watering the root, we'll become satisfied. So we have to keep reminding ourselves. Sometimes we think we hear the same thing almost every day in class, but repetition is the mother of learning. Have we actually applied it? Have we fully applied it? So when everything is, when all the social orders, spiritual orders are engaged in the way Prabhupada described it here, simple living, high thinking, and Krishna is in the center, then it's called Daivi Varnashram. So originally Krishna, Guna Karma Vibhagasa, Chaturvarnamaya Shishtam, Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Chaturvarna, the four spiritual and material orders, were originally explained by Krishna to be according to Guna and Karma activities and qualities and activities. And if one is acting according to this under the direction of Krishna, then one is gradually elevated, even if one is materially involved. But even better than that, if one is putting Krishna in the center of it. So we see here Prabhupada mentioned also about demigods. So for those who are materially engaged in the Varnashram system, they may worship demigods. But for the divine Varnashram system, it means that we actually don't worship the demigods. We respect them, but we don't engage in worship of the demigods for material benefit. We just engage in worship of Krishna, and whatever he decides, then we accept that. So the lesson here is we accept whatever Krishna gives us for service according to time, place, and circumstance. Just like in the beginning of the Krunabhavan, we had 6 devotees in one small car. And a few times we get stopped on the motorway because it was actually a Citroen 2CV 600cc engine. It was before the laws of seatbelts, so we crammed them in. And we got stopped a couple of times on the motorway because the car was just like so heavily laden, and say, okay guys, let one off at the next junction. You can't carry on like this. They were quite kind to us. And then later on, we may have some opulence, but then again, if we don't have it, then still the same thing is we're going to be serving Krishna. With your 2 hands, if Krishna gives, how much can you hold? And with your 2 hands, if Krishna takes, how much can you hold on to? Okay, we'll just stop there. Anyone got any questions or comments? Yes. So you were meaning, what does it scientifically mean? Yes. So this is often when our conditioning, when we think of scientific, we think of people in lab coats and microscopes. But scientifically, like there's a spiritual science. So typically something which is scientific, there's a theory, and then there's a means of testing that theory, and then it's proven, isn't it? So this scientific arranged or organized endeavor is that gradually people engaged from whatever situation they're in, if they're engaged in this Varnashram system, then they'll gradually become elevated. It's designed in such a way to extricate people from the lower modes, take them out of the modes of ignorance, modes of passion, into the modes of goodness. Krishna consciousness, the science of that is such is that by engaging in these activities with Krishna as a center, regardless of what job has, it's just like yesterday we have the kirtan and everybody's engaging in chanting. And in there you may have someone who's a doctor, someone who's on the dole, someone who's this or that, it doesn't matter. But we're all engaging in this process. It's all purifying for everybody. So whatever situation you're in, if we engage in Krishna consciousness, then it's elevating us all. And the science of it is such that it's gradual. By Lord Brahma talks about engaging Krishna consciousness, and by incremental stages, then we advance in Krishna consciousness, we advance in our purification. So sadhana bhakti, regulation of devotional service. And it's also scientific because whatever you associate with, then you become like that. So if we remain associated without any direction and we're attached to doing the same things, just like some time ago, went to visit some old friends, hadn't seen for about 30 years. And it was quite sad to see they were still doing the same things that we gave up years ago. You would have thought they would have moved on since then, but they were still going to the same places, talking about the same mundane things, taking the same types of intoxication. And you realize, wow, this is just like a loop, some kind of like time travel back to some loop which was going on 30 years ago. But by engaging in the process devotion service, we don't realize how far we're coming away from that. But it's available for them as well. It's only meant for certain people. We engage in Krishna conscious activities, and then automatically we start to become elevated. I'm sure we could spend more time discussing this. Anyone got anything else they want to offer there? Anything else? Iskon Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Tiger Premanande. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Jai.